So hello, everybody. We still have attendees logging on, but we're going to get our program today underway. I want to thank all of you who have joined us already and those who continue to do so. We're here today to kick off a three-part webinar series that's going to take a pretty broad look at some of the key scientific, policy, economic, and community perspectives on the changing Northwest Atlantic Ocean. I'm one of your co-hosts for this program. I'm Jake Kreitzer. I'm the Executive Director of NERACOOS, the Northeastern Regional Association of Coastal Ocean Observing Systems. We are part of the US Integrated Ocean Observing System, or IUS, and our charge is to implement IUS from Long Island Sound right up to the Scotian Shelf, where we meet my fellow co-host, who will introduce herself now.
Thanks, Jake. My name is Sheila Fitzsimmons. I'm the Executive Director of CIOOS Atlantic, which is the Atlantic Regional Association of the Canadian Integrated Ocean Observing System. We work really closely with the NERACOOS. We have, shared ocean waters in the Gulf of Maine, and in CIOOS Atlantic, our region of interest goes up along the Scotian Shelf and up around the eastern coast of Newfoundland and Labrador and into the Labrador Sea. And really, the oceanographic influences in the regions that CIOOS Atlantic works within, and NERACOOS as well, are really influenced by what happens in the north. So with this series, we really wanted to think about the influences, not just in our immediate areas of interest, but the areas that cause changes there as well. So we're starting today with focus on the Arctic.
And one of the things that inspired us to do this series was when we got word of a voyage that is underway at the moment of the U.S. Coast Guard cutter Healy. For those who aren't familiar with this boat, it's a pretty impressive vessel. It's the largest and really most technologically advanced research vessel in the Coast Guard fleet. Not long ago, Healy completed its first transit through the Northwest Passage in, I think, almost 20 years, and is continuing on for a complete circumnavigation of North America. First, Healy is right now in the middle of a research cruise in Baffin Bay. And in a few moments, we're actually going to be talking to the chief scientist for that cruise, Dr. Bob Pickart, who normally is based at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. He's going to tell us a bit about his research and what else is going on. But first, we are going to hear some opening remarks from Dr. Melanie Zimmerman. Dr. Zimmerman is the general counsel for the U.S. Embassy in Quebec City. She's had a really distinguished diplomatic career with posts in Germany, Togo, Cameroon, Burkina Faso. Prior to her appointment in Quebec, she was the Deputy Chief of Mission and Charge d'Affaires at the U.S. Embassy for Mauritius and the Seychelles. The U.S. Embassy in Quebec has provided the funding for us to run this program, for which we're really grateful. And so we asked General Counsel Zimmerman to join us and share her thoughts on why what we're trying to do through this program is important. So Melanie, I'm going to turn the mic over to you.
Good afternoon. Just checking that you can hear me before I launch into my little prepared remarks. Okay.
Sorry,
I'm going to go ahead.
Myself, Melanie, we can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. So good afternoon. As I was introduced, I'm Melanie Zimmerman. I'm the United States Consul General in Quebec City. And you're probably wondering, Quebec City, what does that have to do with the Arctic? Well, I am also the chair of Mission Canada's Regional Arctic Committee. And Quebec does have a little part of the Arctic over Nunavik. I also cover the territory of Nunavut. I'm having some technological challenges. The pixies have invaded my computer and are preventing me from having a video feed, so apologies. I'm going to strive to make my voice as dynamic as possible to compensate. So once again, welcome to this webinar on behalf of the U.S. Embassy and all of the consulates in Canada, and on behalf of our Chargé d'Affaires, Chacon. I'm delighted to speak to you today about the Arctic. partly because it's my portfolio, but also because I've grown increasingly passionate about the Arctic, and more precisely to highlight U.S. interests in the Arctic and how the United States and Canada cooperate in the region. Of note, I'm actually headed back to the Arctic on the 8th of October. Now that the Arctic has opened up again, we're able to travel and continue to build those really important contacts and ties to the communities. I was once told you can never go wrong by quoting your boss, and so here it goes. This past February, Secretary Blinken said, I quote, "The United States and Canada, of course, are Arctic nations. And as you all know a lot better than I do, since the Arctic makes up 40% of Canadian territory, it really is a unique and important place where we have responsibility, I think, to work closely together to address a lot of shared challenges, but also, I think, shared opportunities." During the May Arctic Council Ministerial, Secretary Blinken added, "We're committed to advancing a peaceful Arctic region where cooperation prevails on climate, the environment, science and safety, and where sustainable economic development benefits the people of the regions themselves." As Arctic nations, the United States and Canada have, as Secretary Blinken said, a responsibility to work together and this is important, alongside other Arctic nations to ensure the region remains peaceful, secure, and prosperous. So, what's the position of the United States? Broadly speaking, the United States envisions the Arctic region as one that is free of conflict, where nations act responsibly, and where economic development and investment take place in a sustainable, secure, and transparent manner that respects the environment and the interests of the cultures of Indigenous people. To achieve this vision, we're taking a comprehensive approach to the Arctic, giving attention to a full range of U.S. interests, including but not limited to climate, scientific cooperation, safety, security, economic development, and the needs of Indigenous and local communities. I would really like to emphasize the importance of the human dimension. Respecting, understanding, listening to, consulting with our local communities is imperative. We need to ensure that we take the time to build and maintain those crucial local contacts. On my first trip to the Arctic a couple of years ago, one of my Inuit contacts and I were discussing what role the United States could have and how to best approach building those contacts. And my contact said to me, I quote, "Do I know your grandfather? And if not, why should I trust you?" This is a really important element of that relationship building with local communities, that human dimension. So what are we doing there? Well, we also want to strive to reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the Arctic region, with particular focus on methane and black carbon from oil and gas operations, as well as shipping. Another way our two countries are cooperating is through close working relationship between our nation's coast guards and armed forces. Last year, I was a part of Operation Nanook with the Canadian Armed Forces to go up to the Arctic, and I could see what that cooperation looked like. Whether facilitating scientific research in very remote locations, conducting search and rescue missions, or responding to environmental and other threats in the Arctic, maintaining the joint operational readiness of our coast guards and the coordination of our militaries is of critical importance. I'd like to emphasize the conducting of search and rescue missions. As the Arctic opens up, we're seeing more and more interest among American citizens who would like to go and do adventure tourism in the Arctic. And with that comes an increased risk and a possibility that search and rescue missions may become a little more commonplace in the future. So all of this is especially important as the number of vessels transiting Arctic waters is on the rise as well. Internationally, the United States considers the Arctic Council as the premier forum for discussing matters of Arctic governance and values the strong international cooperation the Council has achieved in its 25-year history. We're also interested in addressing Arctic issues at the subnational level by working with local governments and the region's Indigenous peoples. The impact of policy decisions are also most strongly felt on the local level. The people who call the Arctic home and the Indigenous peoples who have generations of knowledge about how to be good stewards of the region must be partners in our Arctic efforts. Secretary Blinken reminded us The Arctic as a region for strategic competition has seized the world's attention, but the Arctic is more than a strategic or economically significant region. It's home to our people. It's a hallmark, has and must remain peaceful cooperation. Among the top challenges we face are dramatic physical and environmental changes that are making the Arctic more accessible and opening up new possibilities for resource extraction, seabed mining, the tourism I was just mentioning, and transit routes. We're also increasingly seeing engagement in the Arctic by both Russia and China. The United States is absolutely committed to ensuring the Arctic remains a peaceful region where our interests are safeguarded, our homeland is protected, and the Arctic states work cooperatively to address shared challenges. Like Canada, the United States seeks sustainable economic development that supports local and Indigenous communities and respects principles of good governance and transparency. That's why when President Biden virtually visited Canada in February of this year, the Arctic was prominently featured in our joint roadmap for a renewed U.S.-Canada partnership. As part of this partnership, our countries agreed to launch an expanded U.S.-Canada Arctic dialogue to cover cross-cutting issues related to the continental security, economic and social development, and more generally, Arctic governance. I am confident together we will overcome the challenges that lay ahead of us in the Arctic, and we will seize the incredible opportunities available to build a more secure, resilient, and prosperous Arctic and coastal communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General Counsel Zimmerman, for those fantastic remarks, and to your embassy as well for its support of this webinar series. As we move forward in this webinar, we're going to first hear from Dr. Bob Pickart, currently at sea in Baffin. And then we will hear from two expert panels. The first will focus on a range of scientific issues, while the second will consider interrelated community, policy, and community perspectives. So as we get ready to talk to Robert, I'd just like to introduce him. So Robert Pickart is a senior scientist in the Physical Oceanography Department at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. His research focuses on high latitude processes, including air-sea does fieldwork in both the Atlantic and Pacific sectors of the Arctic Ocean using a variety of techniques. And over the years, he's led dozens of research expeditions. Thanks for joining us, Bob.
Bob, can you hear us okay? We're not hearing you. I don't know if you're still on mute or if we've lost our connection. Okay. This was always the gamble of trying to connect with a research vessel way out in the middle of the sea. No dice. Bob's still not hearing us. Okay. I think what we might do is I'm going to talk really slowly and very obviously stall Jock. So maybe 5 minutes or so with just a couple of slides from each of our panelists, who we will introduce in turn. And we want to hear just some of their observations on important research findings, important research gaps, to seed a panel discussion that Shayla and I will moderate afterwards. During that discussion, we're going to do our best to take some questions from those of you listening in as time allows, but there is a questions tab on your webinar controls. So please feel free to add questions there. We'll get to those we can, but we'll record and revisit the others after the webinar. And I'm going to turn it over to Shayla to introduce our first panelist.
So our first panelist is...
hello, Jake. This is Bob. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Bob. Can you hear us?
Okay, sorry I got cut off. Is it okay for me to talk now?
I think while we have you, we should talk to you. So everything you all just heard me say about the panel, remember that so I don't have to repeat it later. But let's go back to Bob Pickart. So Bob, while you were disconnected, Shayla gave everyone a brief bio on who you are and where you're based and what you study. So, you know, you and I sat down in your office this summer and you kind of gave me an overview of what you were going to be doing on the expedition that you're in the midst of right now. And I thought it was really interesting and really important research. So maybe you could take a few moments just to share with everyone joining us today what it is you're doing out there in the middle of Baffin Bay.
Okay, Jake, thank you. I'll go ahead and do that. And I think I'll probably pause a couple times just to make sure that I'm still connected.
Well, you are, and also I'll just let you know that Bob had sent a couple of images with maps at different scales of where he's working and the oceanographic processes. And those are, Bob, I don't know if you can see them. They're up side by side on the screen. So refer to those as you need to.
Okay, very good. So first of all, greetings everyone from the U.S. Coast Guard Cutter Healy. We left Nuuk, Greenland, I think it was a week ago Monday, and we're now in Baffin Bay, and we're very excited to be in this region. I think Jake mentioned earlier that it's very infrequently that the Healy sails to the Eastern Arctic. The last time that happened was in 2003. So this is a rare and exciting opportunity for us to work in this part of the world. So what I'd like to do in my short talk here is to give you a general view of what the scientific motivation is for our expedition. And then I'll go in and talk about some of the projects